The views and opinions expressed on the Hard Time Podcast are of the hosts and guests individually. The Hard Time Podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not affiliated with any entity, agency, or department. Human beings have thoughts and feelings that do not necessarily affect the professional performance of their duties.
Welcome once again to the Hard Time Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Motherfucker Welder, Sergeant in the American Southwest in a penal institution. That's right, I said penal less than 1 minute into the podcast. So not a whole lot's has gone on since I last recorded, but I do have a big meeting today. So we have a big staff meeting going on. So usually they share with us ahead of time like what's going to be going on and stuff, but they haven't this time. So I know just general attendance and stuff has been an issue. So I imagine that's what the meeting will be about. I didn't really inquire too much. I've taken a day off here or there, just like one day off the first time in 6 months. I feel guilty about it. I only work 3.5 days on, 3.5 days off. So I feel guilty taking a day off, folks. Not a whole lot going on in jail news. Personally, things are going well. Got some of the kids starting school now. John feels like my kids have been babies for forever, but they are now entering school age. So all of my kids will be going in some form of schooling here soon. So not sure what I'm going to do with myself without having my tiny children climbing all over me at all times, asking me for things and causing a ruckus in the background while I'm trying to record. So it'll be interesting to have them in school. The one that's in school right now it's been going well. So that's where we are with the updates. In our episode today, we're going to be discussing tablets and phones. Tablets and phones with felons. It's a winning combination. Only good things can happen. I don't understand how anything could go wrong. We have two very different states to start off with, to contrast. As far as those things go, we have California and Florida to contrast. You'd think how these types of communication devices, what their policies would be. You'd think California and Florida would have very different policies, but we'll get into it. So this is from Cap Radio, Kate Wolf, Wednesday, July 19th, 2023 in Sacramento, California. Almost all people incarcerated in California now have free tablets. Free tablets, guys. They cost zero money. They don't cost the taxpayers any money at all. So they're just free, guys. It's free money. They don't cost a damn thing. For incarcerated journalists, it's a new one. I've heard about those programs, but I've never heard of the actual term incarcerated journalist. Greg Eskridge. The mark of a tablet's computer's influence is clearest on the bottom floor of his cell block in San Quentin State Prison. He says as recently as April 2023, on the floor was packed with 50 to 60 people waiting in line to get a chance to make a 15-minute call on one of 7 payphones. So 50, 60 people, 7 payphones. Yeah, it would take a while. Arguments broke out when people left the line and then tried to get back in, or if they took someone else's designated slot, cut in front. The whole process yielded, quote, a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, Eskridge said. None of that was by means of the inmates' behavior. I've been in a lot of lines, a lot of queues myself, And usually just by being a normal human being and having a little bit of understanding and just normal human interaction, you can get through that. Being in line is not something that should cause that much difficulty. It's something that most adults can do and can do rather well. I was one of the busiest shopping days of the year, navigated a line where only one person tried to cut and we all agreed as adults was not going to be able to cut the line. And that person promptly went to the back of the line. Like, we all did it as adults. No fist fights, no feces was thrown. Nobody got shivved or shanked. In Walmart, security didn't get called. Like, that's how normal adults, people in society, behave. Not so in prisons and jails. Now the line at the bank of phones is gone, and people can be often found making phone calls in their cells in the yard, where they can speak privately about criminal enterprise or whatever they want to do, hide the gun, kill the witness, etc. Not always the case, but I'm sure it does go on. That's because everyone can make calls for free on their Android tablets, bigger than iPhone, but still handheld with thick plastic coating, like those JPay ones. It's just amazing how one small implementation of a device could change the whole overall atmosphere of the building and the prison in general. Yeah. Since August 2021, California's Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has given out 90,000 free tablets to people incarcerated across the state. Distribution is expected to be completed in the California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo this month, and to incarcerated firefighters in the near future. The distribution builds on a tablet pilot program that started in 2018 and is in line with a shift towards rehabilitation in the system. This spring, Governor Gavin Newsom announced San Quentin will become San Quentin Rehabilitation Center. No longer a prison, it's a rehab center. And the first prison moving forward the California model. California's legislative analyst has deemed the plan underdeveloped, even while praising the administration's goals. Here are 5 things to know about the tablet program. Not everything is free. Go figure. Many aspects of the tablets are free. In addition to free calls, people have a limited number of free video calling minutes and text messages they can send. Plus, there are legal resources available through the LexisNexis app, as well as medication and religious text apps. However, after the allotted free messages, incarcerated people and their contacts can expect to pay 5 cents per message sent and 20 cents per video call minute. In addition, people in prison could pay between $1.99 and $7.99 more for premium services like music, movies, and ebooks. So are people in prison spending this? Most likely not. Most likely it's family members that are paying for this. Brian Thames is incarcerated in California State Prison Solano and is a producer for the Uncuffed podcast, which is made in collaboration with public radio station KALW in San Francisco. He said he prefers texting his wife over waiting for a letter from her, but messaging can get expensive. We run through money, he said. Those nickels add up for us. It turns into dollars daily. Thames estimates he spends about $50 per month on the tablet. Yeah, it adds up quickly. Tablets don't provide access to internet browsing or social media. That could be would be a violation for a violation of security for sure, but it could be a violation also of like conditions of release, probation, parole in the future for these people. But yeah, definitely not a good idea for people that are incarcerated. Although the tablets have up-to-date news information for people who pay for access to news, which is not always a good idea, and magazines. They don't have an internet browser. That means no social media either. Incarcerated people stay connected with those on the outside by adding them to their list of approved contacts and adding them through the My Getting Out mail app. Tablets are intended to support rehabilitation. Enhanced communication and bridging the digital divide have been priorities for criminal justice reform advocates for years. Some argue it's necessary when programs aren't available, that digital literacy is crucial for people when they are released and returned to society. Research also shows having more communication with close contacts is better as long as it doesn't impede in-person visitation. The Enhanced Communication Project aims to strengthen the bonds between incarcerated population and their with their families and communities. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation says on its website, for incarcerated journalist Tui Ka in the substance abuse treatment facility in the state prison in Corcoran, the tablet gave him an opportunity to hear from his estranged brother who had recently come out as transgender. We came to terms that we understand each other, and that was great. He said, now we are more connected and we know each other more than we did before. Ka said he also noticed since the introduction of the tablets how the culture inside the facility has changed. He says stress, depression, and violence have noticeably decreased, but there might be downsides. When the tablets were rolled out in other parts of the country, Nonprofit Policy Initiative noted that states are often lax in protecting the prisoner consumer. In some cases, the tablets have been beleaguered with technological issues like inconsistent messaging and call services. So, yeah, just because you have it doesn't mean that they're going to stay charged, that they're going to, that IT issues aren't going to be a problem. Wanda Bertram with the Prison Policy Initiative adds that there's a possibility tablets could be slow down or eliminate the proliferation of in-person programs, counseling, and educational opportunities in prison. So it's not a substitute. I think in states like California, where everything's kind of, they teach about personal technology and everything's still in that kind of dream, there's the potential for tablets to be used for things that really should be delivered in person, she said. Greg Estridge at San Quentin says he worries that the collegial and encouraging atmosphere that often thrived pre-tablet is falling by the wayside. So the encouraging atmosphere is falling by the wayside. So people are getting too involved in their devices and not connecting with each other on a one-on-one basis or in a group setting. Yeah, you're going to have that. I mean, any parent that has a child that is addicted to a tablet can tell you that. Like that's a big thing. Like once they get a device that they're addicted to, like they're not going to be spending as much time with family. It's like fucking crack. It's crazy. At one point, you can walk around in here and everyone is talking about building each other up, helping each other, and understanding certain concepts, whether it be educated or self-help groups and goals. But now you don't necessarily have that as much. The current contract is temporary. In May, the California Supreme Court ruled that CDCR engaged in unfair bidding practices when it signed its contract with ViaPath Technologies, formerly Global Tellink or GTL, which provided the tablets. So I'm sure there was no kind of kickback or anything like that. I mean, it's California. Why would there be any kind of backdoor deal going on there? The lawsuit was brought by the other big player in prison tablets, Securus Technologies, which provided tablets for the 2018 pilot program with its subsidiary, JPay. So that was the other one I mentioned. That's the one I'm familiar with before the new contract was signed. The Sacramento County Superior Court ordered the department to vacate its 6-year contract with ViaPath Technologies, begin a new bidding process before the permanent agreement. In the meantime, CDCR says existing tablet and phone services will be maintained during the interim period, but no additional services will be implemented until the permanent contract is in place. So I can't see that going bad at all, where people get set up on one program or put money into one program and then it gets taken away, or they have a problem with the a dispute or whatever or something, and they have to take the tablets away. Like, I don't know how many times we book teenage children into jail for a parent taking their device is like the beginning of the police contact. Like, that is how things start. So the article concludes the department is allowed to maintain the temporary contract for 30 months and said there will be no gap in services during this transition. I am sure of that, because government is super, super good at that, maintaining no gaps and being efficient. What about Florida? Florida, this is in 2026, so we're coming back into the modern day here. We're not talking about a couple years ago. Pilot programs, 2023 and 2018 and 2023 and whatever. We're talking about 2026 now. This is Florida Phoenix. Mitch Perry, June 2025 is when this article came out. Funding for free prison phone calls makes it into approved Florida fiscal year 2026 budget. Advocates hope the measure avoids DeSantis's veto pen this time around. So it was vetoed again before. It could be vetoed again. So advocates for providing inmates in Florida prisons with one free 15-minute phone call if they display good behavior say they are cautiously optimistic that the proposal included in the $115 billion budget passed by the legislature early this week will survive Governor DeSantis' veto pen. The $1 million proposal was included in the Appropriations Committee on Criminal and Civil Justice budget, chaired by Okaloosa County Republican State Representative Pat Maney and Miami-Dade County Republican Senator Elena Garcia. Their insertion of the funding comes a year after Ron DeSantis vetoed the $2 million request to continue the program, and 2 years after the initial $1 million pilot program for free calls was enacted. Thank you to Chair Garcia, Chair Maney, and the committee and the staff for restoring funding for the prison phone call program, said Graham Bernstein, who is a member of the Florida Student Policy Forum at the University of Florida, who, as a member of the Florida Student Policy Forum at the University of Florida, researched the idea and brought it to the local state public officials a few years ago. OPPAGA, the Office of the Program of Policy and Analysis and Government Accountability, reports and other evidence shows that this policy reduces recidivism by helping inmates who demonstrate good behavior stay connected with the outside world, saves families the incarcerated money, and lowers taxpayers' spending on reincarceration. In Florida's correction system, inmates may only make collect calls, for which vendor ViaPath Technologies charges 13.5 cents a minute. As part of their contract with the Department of Corrections, they are allowed 2 free 5-minute phone calls per month. As Bernstein notes, independent studies have shown the benefits of allowing inmates to keep in contact with loved ones. A 2006 report from the Urban Institute found that within 5 years of release, incarcerated people with a strong family connections were 25% more likely to cease criminal activity. A 2005 report on incarcerated mothers' contact with children found that telephone calls, even more than physical visits, related to a positive maternal perceptions of relationships with children. We should not punish the family for the sins of a single family member, said Konstantin Nakov when he worked with Bernstein on researching the high costs of prison phone calls while at the Florida Student Policy Forum. Children should not be punished for the crime of their parent committed. This appropriation aims to reconnect a bond that may have been severed by incarceration by assuring the families of those who are in prison are not drawn into poverty to make phone calls. I wouldn't say 13 cents a minute will make send them into poverty, but I'll finish the article before I give my thoughts. Karen Stuckey is a prison reform advocate. She worked within the Broward County Democratic State Senator Lauren Book on a proposal during 2022 session required during the Department of Corrections to provide inmates phone calls free of charge. Her bill didn't acquire a House sponsor and died without being heard in any committee. Access to a parent in prison is difficult. High price of email, phone calls, and travel, yet we know how important it is for children to have a bond with their parents, said Stuckey, who had to deal with at one point in her life with escalating phone bills as both her son and husband had been incarcerated in Florida prisons. We've had productive discussions with the governor's office of policy and budget on this matter, and hope the governor will support the legislature's decision. The budget sent to his desk is slated to begin July 1st of the 2025-26 fiscal year, although he's expected to veto certain lines before then. So, I mean, they're saying, well, we don't want to punish the children, but that's the difficult thing is you have to have some sort of incentives for good behavior. I know, they talk about the economy of good behavior and stuff like that, and it's not always the best thing because that's not how the real world works, but like you have to have something to incentivize them to behave in jail, because if you don't, then they're not going to just behave, of their own accord. You're required by law to give them a certain amount of free phone calls. So there's always going to be a free phone call of some sort. Maybe giving an additional one might be something that you can do. As far as the familial bonds, I mean, I think that saying that strengthening those things could help. It depends on your family. I mean, who are they contacting? Are the people that they're contacting, you're assuming that these are quality people that they're contacting and that it's going to be a positive thing when they're with these people when they leave jail. That's the assumption. It sounds like to me, if I see all kinds that come through for visitation, just from not just the outward appearance, but from like their behavior, setting up visits and dropping things off, and how they act about, what the rules are and stuff. And, some people are very gracious about the rules and very appreciative of, how professionally they're treated. And then there's others who are quite the opposite. Try to get something over on everything, try to throw a fit. They threaten legal action over why they can't give a racy photo to somebody. Like, it's pretty stupid. So, if you make the assumption that the person that they're talking to is quality person, that the family is a good family, and that the you know the contact with the child is going to be positive, that the child is going to be able to, that's the other thing, is the child going to be able to glean something positive from this person that's in jail? Are they trying to do better, and are they going to be positive for their families? I would hope so, but oftentimes it's not the case. Oftentimes they are educating the next generation of convicts. Oftentimes they're just passing down the same anti-establishment lessons and stuff down to their children, so that they can follow them in the same exact path, making the same exact mistakes, ending up in the same exact institutions, and following it down. So by all means, give them another free phone call at the cost of the taxpayers to do that. I I see why you depending on the fiscal year and how you want to spend money and stuff, if things are tight, you might say, I want to spend that $1 million elsewhere. So talk about where these millions and millions of dollars that these phone calls cost. Where does this come from? And not all phone services and stuff cost that much money. Right now, the phone service that we use costs very little money. The cable services that the jail uses cost very little money, because it's offered to the institution at a certain rate. So it's not costing a ton to the taxpayers. But because there's so many problems with phone calls and stuff, we're going to go to a system that may, go to like they're talking about, like terminals that we will have to pre-program and stuff. And I don't know what the, full cost of that will be for our next fiscal year. There will certainly be a large upfront cost of installing the terminals, and then what is the operating costs? It may not be as extensive as 13 cents a minute, or whatever, multiple dollars per phone call, but there's an associated cost with everything. So, but there was some money that reportedly basically that essentially fell from heaven here, basically. So in a final act of mercy, Pope Francis donates entire private bank account to prisoners. So just in case, the Pope, he's had quite a few, Pope Francis had quite a few different things during his life where he talked about prisoners and had services and stuff and different things, but this is his one more gesture by him. This is by NCR Online. Camilo Barone is the one that wrote this article. At the end of his life, Pope Francis made one last symbolic gesture. He emptied his personal bank account to donate 200,000 euros to the prisoners he had long championed. It was the final act of love towards those he had called his brothers and sisters behind bars, an act that Bishop Benoit and Marcus, auxiliary bishop of the Rome and director of the Office for Prison Pastoral Care, said captures the very essence of Francis' pontificate. Ambaris had witnessed firsthand the Pope's commitment to the incarcerated. Even as his strength and visibility declined, Francis refused to abandon the most forgotten members of society during Holy Week. A few days ago, the Holy Father dragged his body to the Regina Coeli. I don't even know what that means. Aanndd said in an April 23 interview with the Italian daily La Repubblica, referring to the Pope's last visit to the Holy Roman prison on Holy Thursday, April 12th. So, Regina Coeli. So, maybe we should cover the Holy Roman prison at some point. Francis's bond with the prison population was a core feature of his ministry. From the start of his papacy, he made headlines by washing the feet of intimates on Holy Thursdays and calling, or inmates, not intimates, holy hell, on Holy Thursdays and calling for greater compassion within the justice systems. But Aanndd said the Pope's heartfelt appeals for prisoners often fell on deaf ears. Institutions, he said, did nothing to give even a small signal in response to Francis's call for action. In his final months, Francis pushed for even harder for symbolic and concrete gestures to bring hope to the incarcerated, and one of the most significant achievements was the opening of a holy door at Rebibbia prison, a rare privilege previously reserved for the Vatican's own St. Peter's Basilica. The idea, born from the inmates themselves, was essentially or enthusiastically embraced by Francis as a powerful way to reignite the light within the prison walls. Opening a holy door, hopefully not a cell door. The holy door at Rebibbia sparked a broader pastoral movement where groups of volunteers, priests, and religious sisters now regularly re-enter the prison to join prisoners in Mass in moments of reflection. Each visit, Aanndd said, has been carefully prepared to ensure participants understand the profound meaning behind their presence. Not to observe prisoners like exhibits, but to share in their humanity and struggles. Despite these efforts, the systematic changes Francis longed for, such as sentence reductions and more humane detention conditions, largely failed to materialize. The Pope had even proposed modest measures, small remissions of prison times, a month or two, to signal trust in the possibility of redemption. Such symbolic acts, Aanndd said, could have reignited hope. Instead, the lack of any governmental response left a sense of bitterness among prisoners who had seen in Francis their only real advocate. These inmates saw the Pope's death not just as a passing of a religious leader, but as the loss of a father figure. As a symbol of their gratitude and grief, they gave Aanndd with a letter and a flower and placed on the Pope's tomb. Beyond the official ceremonies he attended at prisons, Francis's care for prisoners was profoundly personal. When he asked to support prison ministry initiatives financially, even as Vatican resources dwindled, he did not hesitate to dip into his personal savings. "Don't worry, I have something in my account," he told Aanndd before transferring 200,000 euros to the needs of the incarcerated, money he might have kept for his own use in his final days. A poignant detail revealed after his death showed that Francis' burial would be paid for by a benefactor. Having given everything to others, he left no money behind in a final demonstration of solidarity with the poor and marginalized. The prison work Francis inspired continues, albeit with new challenges. The pastoral ministry that grew around the Rebibbia Holy Door now involves about 50 people joining the prisoners twice a month. Being there during and after detention, Benoni told the Italian newspaper, it is often the most powerful gift one can offer. Too many inmates, he said, go through their entire sentences without ever receiving a visitor. Small gestures, a letter, a conversation, practical help with shoes or clothing can reignite human dignity that prison walls so often extinguish. So, about 200,000 euros. I don't know what that will will translate to in phone calls was probably quite a bit. So we have a couple other places that have considered tablets and phones. They say it helps out with the community, it cuts down on recidivism, it cuts down on fights, it does all these things, but there's so many other problems with it and stuff that we've covered on this before. So we'll continue here with this. This is from the Lewiston Tribune in Idaho. Dean Ferguson. Computer tablets cut jail fights, ease staff burden at Idaho jail. Free inmate tablets at Nez Perce County Jail improve behavior, reduce contraband, and enable secure communication with families and lawyers. Lewiston, Ohio. Parents can attest to the difference electronics can make on a road trip for everyone involved. It turns out computer screens have the same effect on quieting boredom for prisoners in Nez Perce County Jail. It's become quite a good babysitter, the NPC Deputy Gail Brink, 38, who was apologetic about the metaphor. There is a change in inmate behavior. We call it Officer Xbox. Whatever, you can interchange whatever electronic device. One of Brink's jobs is to monitor the use of tablets that are issued to inmates in the 165 capacity Nez Perce County Jail. That is a pretty small jail. On October 1st, the jail started issuing computer tablets free to each inmate. These devices not only provide entertainment, educational, viewing, and listening, they have become how lawyers, loved ones, and visitors communicate with inmates, officials say. While technology is new to Nez Perce County, the Canyon County Jail in Caldwell introduced the tablets 2 years ago. Immediately, the tablets made the prison population more peaceful. We saw a decline of 40% for disturbances and fights. That's because they're taking all of their criminal activity and they're focusing on the tablets, jailbreaking them. That's right, I said jailbreaking them. The rates for fights and disturbances have remained at the new lower level and have decreased more, Ingle said. Improvements to quality of life. Brink and Ingle both stress the quality of life in jails has improved with the tablets. Inmates are not to be punished. Inmates are not here to be punished or punish more, Brink said. They're to be penitent. Yeah, they literally are. It's not a penitentiary. They're waiting sentencing and stuff there. They're awaiting what's going on, but it is a form of punishment being in jail. They're separated from their loved ones and stuff because they committed crimes, and then you're giving access to their loved ones, thereby kind of taking away part of the punishment of being in jail, but whatever. Brink believes that providing access to self-help, drug and alcohol recovery information, religious programming, and audiobooks helps inmates so they can listen to their all their filthy romance novels in jail. Giving prisoners a chance to watch the same entertainment that someone on the outside views isn't extravagant. It might be. They don't need to watch, all the filthy entertainment that they want. We're not pampering them by any means, Brink said. I've never had to spend my holidays in jail. I have. I've spent a lot of holidays in jail, separated from my family. Engel said inmates now have more opportunities to communicate with friends and families. In fact, the texting function called chirping aligns with how people communicate these days. Anybody can visit from anywhere, Engel said. The texting system, that's how they communicate anyway, so they can use the text system all the time. So they can chirp at each other. They can chirp at people all the time. It's just like being at home. Whatever misgivings folks have with the technology, having tablets in jail just amounts to keeping up with the times. I've been in the business for about 20 years, and it's modernizing a lot lately, and it helps us, and it helps the inmates and the staff, Engel said. By avoiding disturbances and fights over a centralized telephone, or what is on television, or whose football team is better, the quality of life for inmates is improved. And the screens take some of the pressure off jail staff. Staff isn't constantly under boredom-driven scrutiny from inmates. The tablets take the attention off of staff. They're more focused on the screen. That's true. I'll give them that. They get completely myopic on, their entertainment and stuff, but it's not that they don't get, there still isn't gambling going on based on the games and stuff that they're watching, and they aren't still, I don't know how much, it depends on how much, like, the entertainment, what type of movies and stuff they have on there. A lot of times they don't allow them to watch like super violent, super sexualized stuff. So I guess that's a good thing. Along with viewing entertainment and getting more books online, inmates can also access mental health counseling and other self-improvement resources. And oftentimes those things they will have for free. So those are things that can still go on. This is something I like, though. No more physical mail. Inmate mail is now sent through the same company that provides the computer system, and mail is scanned in and arrives digitally. So you don't have people falling out from messages that are laced with drugs. So that's a good thing. Dropping physical letters from the system has cut off a common route used to smuggle certain kinds of contraband. That's a huge benefit. Contraband is huge. Engel said they can send drugs through the mail system, such as Suboxone, opioid packs in the mail, and books. They can't get those drugs into the facilities like that now. Daily headlines straight to your inbox. Read it online first and stay up to date. Delivered daily at 7 a.m. They can also maybe they can decide like what news and stuff goes through, because you don't necessarily want like the local crime blotter and stuff on there. You don't want that kind of stuff. You don't want like obituaries and stuff. You don't necessarily want like if there are events like sudden tragedy deaths and stuff, like vehicular deaths and things like that go on. You don't necessarily want those things to be delivered through the news. It's better to deliver that type of news to inmates in person. So, cost breakdown. Texas-based CTEL installed and manages the tablet system. The company is responsible for the equipment, training, and creating available content and helping monitor communication. CTEL did not return a call from Lewiston Tribune to comment on the story. Some content in the tablets is free. However, some premium content costs money. Inmates get 40 minutes a week of visitation time over the tablet for free, which can be split up in smaller chunks or used all at once. After that, it costs 5 cents per minute, which inmates can pay out of their commissary. Visitation via tablet is available 7 days a week between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Inmates can't all be using the visitation at the same time, though. It's free to view non-premium content through the religious and drug recovery programs, and plenty of books are available at no charge. Premium content costs 5 cents per minute. Shawshank Redemption, which runs at 2 hours and 22 minutes, would cost $6.40. Texting is 10 cents for 150 characters or 20 cents for 320 characters. The system is paid for by inmate usage fees, part of Nez Perce County contract with CTEL dedicates a share of inmate fees purchasing with hygiene items, mattresses, earbuds, and more. None of the system requires money from the county, so he did not know how much CTEL took to run the program. Public defenders expressed concerns, whereas jail managers seem an upside of the system. Idaho's public defenders seem more circumspect. They're concerned that the indigenous people can't pay for access. There's worry too. Why? Just because they're indigent. Sorry. Indigent people can't pay for access. There's also worry that confidentiality could be compromised in the communications between attorneys and their clients because they could just be on their tablet wherever. For our agency, it is essential for Idaho's jails allow state public defenders' clients to contact their public defenders in ways that don't cost the indigent inmate any money. And that means of communication are secure and private. I'll communicate between a private and client in custody and their public defender does not preserve that. We could have concerns. Brink said the system does not spy on inmates by talking to their attorneys. However, he said there's not a brighter right to privacy in jail. Text messages to people who aren't lawyers can and will be monitored. Self-incrimination is not uncommon. There's not common, but it is possible. If prisoners do incriminate themselves, then copies of the text are provided to defense and prosecution via a USB drive sent by certified mail. Yeah, so I could see that. It's just like the phone system, phones being recorded. The text can be used against you in a court of law. So the defense lawyers are worried about that. Combating abuse of the system. CTEL has clients across the nation and has a program designed to prevent abuses. As far as concerns about inmates who use texting feature to video calls, they can't easily stalk or harass people because the system allows for easy blocking. Also, the system prevents the naughtier live visitation by presenting only a close-up image of the face of the person who is calling, not a face. If it's not a face, it's blurred. Of course, officers like Brink can and do monitor the communications. When asked if he was concerned about prisoners having access to podcasts and dole out advice about how to escape from jail, Brink just chuckled. Good luck with that. They all give each other advice on that anyways. So jail calls. This in Ohio. Ohio inmates say incriminating, damaging things on recorded lines. By Cornelius Frolic, the Dayton Daily News. So yeah, I mean they say, oh, this feature blurs this out, this feature does this feature does that. But I'm sure the officers that are going through this stuff monitoring these things don't appreciate the fact that a lot of these features aren't foolproof, and they will find a way around a lot of ways to communicate and stuff. And officers have to see that. So I feel for the officers that have to deal with those types of things. Like, you don't want to be the tablet officer and be the one that's got to take the tablet or tell them the tablet doesn't work or it's going to be 30 days until you can get a replacement or whatever. Like, nobody wants to be the tablet officer. Inmates incarcerated in jails across Miami Valley and the state of Ohio are warned that their jail phone calls are recorded. And yet investigators and law enforcement officials review these calls because sometimes suspects make incriminating statements or admissions or share in other information that can be useful to a criminal investigation at trial. A man in Middletown who badly injured his landlord but claimed self-defense on a recorded line said he didn't view her as a threat to his safety. Investigators in Montgomery County said they figured out where a suspected drug trafficker's weapons and narcotics were moved and hidden by listening to his jail calls. A suspect in Greene County admitted on a jail call he tried to outrun police on his motorcycle, which helped them establish he willfully and dangerously fleeing and eluding a police officer. This is another thing that during visitation, the visitation officer that's sitting there that's listening would pick up a lot of intelligence, things that they would talk to their family. We don't have, it's like at my facility, we have just the phone, through the glass like you see on TV. But they would pick up a lot of intelligence by listening to the visits and stuff. So you'd sit there bored as all get out, but sometimes you pick up some juicy tidbits about where a gun was hidden or some drugs or something like that. So defense attorneys say criminal defense defendants should not discuss any details of their cases on jail phones because their comments could come back to haunt them in the courtroom. All of our lawyers tell our clients when we first meet them not to talk about their case on the phone. Montgomery County Public Defender Teresa Hare, when we remind them periodically not to talk on the phone about their cases. We also explain that even if they believe what they have to say is helpful, it can backfire at trial. On a threat, on August 14, 2021, in Middletown, police officer on patrol was stopped by a man named Joshua Speaks, who said he'd been in an altercation with his roommate, Sarah Risner. The officer found Risner upstairs in her home, badly injured, covered in blood, and unable to speak. Speaks claimed Risner pulled a knife on him, and police found a small kitchen knife near Risner in the home. Risner later told Speaks was homeless, but that she was allowed to stay with him temporarily. She said Speaks attacked her, and she ordered him to move out. Risner suffered very serious injuries, including a fracture of her orbital eye socket and a brain bleed. She said she developed foreign accent syndrome. Hey, mate. Police said they learned that Speaks has been a cage fighter for years, knew mixed martial arts, and had been in many MMA fights, according to court records from the appeals for the 12th Appellate District Court of Ohio. At his trial, Speaks testified that Risner rushed him at full speed and slashed at him with a knife. Speaks claimed he fought for his life, but prosecutors played excerpts of several jail-recorded phone calls in the courtroom. In one call, Speaks told the person on the other end of the line that he is about a foot taller than Risner and not much heavier, and he never perceived her as a threat. Really? You're going to use like the legal jargon? In quotes, never once perceived her as a threat. Instead, viewed her as someone who miles off, says court records of a court of appeals. Speaks is 6'2" tall, and at the time weighed 232 pounds. Risner is 5'3" and weighed 150 pounds. At trial, Speaks tried to explain away his comments, saying that he was talking to his sister and he always used gentle language with her, and he wanted to minimize the severity of the encounter, court documents state. Speaks was found guilty of felonious assault in September 2022 and sentenced to 8 to 12 years in prison. Asked about his case and jail calls in general, Butler County Prosecutor Mike Jamoser told his newspaper, "Generally, I do not discuss legal police methods and practices with the general public other than a few law-abiding citizens who may be interested. Such information serves no useful purpose while educating those interested in pursuing criminal conduct and how to avoid accountability. But don't fucking talk on the phones." Ample notice. Inmates at Butler County Jail who use the phone are played automated messages saying jail calls can be monitored and recorded. Dumbass. These warnings are also written out and played on scrolls on TV screens during the inmates' video calls, the sheriff's office said. Inmate handbooks say jail calls are recorded. At Montgomery County Jail, most of the housing units are equipped with phones in the common areas. When inmates pick up the phones, they are played pre-recorded audio that said the calls are recorded and subject to monitoring at any time, said Montgomery County Sheriff Magistrate Julie Stevens. Inmates must also enter their personal ID numbers before they make phone calls so officials know who is on the line. Physical signage on the phones states that calls are subject to monitoring and recording, said Stevens, who oversees the jail. Despite these and similar warnings, criminal defendants sometimes still talk about the facts of their cases with friends and loved ones, said Rittners and Nagima, a criminal defense law firm with 4 offices in Southwest Ohio. The law firm says jail calls have been used at trial to try to show defendants' statements in court to contradict what they said on the recorded line. The firm said sometimes jail calls are played in court to try to attack the credibility of the defendant's testimony. Ohio court records and search warrant applications show that jail calls have been used to establish the defendants were at crime scenes or that they knew what they did was wrong or a crime. 57-year-old man in Greene County was sentenced to multiple years of prison after he admitted in a jail call to fleeing from police on his motorcycle at a speed in excess of 100 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone. He crashed and was seriously injured. In August 2023, a detective with the Dayton Police Department Narcotics Bureau saw multiple persons remove items from the home of a suspected drug trafficker. The suspect had been recently arrested and was incarcerated in Montgomery County Jail when this happened. The detective listened to recordings of calls made while in lockup. The suspect allegedly told his brother to clean his home in one call, said a federal affidavit in support of an application for a search warrant. In later calls, his brother allegedly said the items were removed and were placed in a storage locker that belonged to a sister. Investigators used the information from jail calls to obtain toll records for the sister that they say helped police identify the location of the storage locker. A canine performed an open-air sniff of the storage locker and gave positive alerts for the presence of narcotics. The affidavit states police obtained and executed a search warrant inside the locker. They allegedly recovered multiple guns, 147 grams of cocaine, and other evidence. The case is still active. Hare, the Montgomery County Police defender, said most of her office clients follow their attorney's advice and do not talk about their cases on the phone. She said she doesn't know why some people fail to heed this advice. Hare said jail calls are rarely helpful. However, she said anecdotally, she'd heard about the cases where people the inmate called admit the crimes on recorded lines. Sometimes the people inmates called threatened them or told them not to cooperate with authorities or testify at trial. In some cases, inmates ended up getting charged with additional crimes because they are caught threatening witnesses or other people or warning them not to testify. Police say criminal defendants sometimes make false or misleading comments in jail because they know they are being recorded and they hope to put law enforcement on the wrong track. So a little cat and mouse going on with the jail call sometimes, hoping, praying that it might work. So sometimes it goes right and sometimes it goes wrong with the jail calls. But what happens when it goes seriously wrong with the phone and tablet system? What happens when they get hacked? So the clickbait that I mentioned at the beginning of the show in the title, Risky Bulletin. Prisoner hacks IT system, goes wild. It's by Kelton Simpano. In other news, hackers leak employee data. John Bolton hacked and extorted giant sim farm, seized in Latvia. Holy shit. Lots of stuff going on. A convict in a Romanian prison has hacked the country's prisoner management platform in a security breach that has rocked Romania's penitentiary agency. The incident took place in August and continued through October. Jeez. So he wasn't just trying to get a little extra phone call time or something. He hacked the whole system, burn it all down. From various reports in Romanian media and a statement released from the National Penitentiary Police Union, the incident appears to have originated in the city of Dej in Romania's Transylvania region, at a prison hospital complex where prisoners are sent to treat illnesses and return to finish their sentence at their normal jails. A prisoner found a way to hack tablets and kiosks installed in the Dej Hospital prison and other Romanian penitentiaries. These systems allow convicts to access an online platform managed by the National Penitentiary Association using a username and password. Prisoners can file requests, can redeem days off their sentence by performing various jobs, can add money to a bank account that they can later use to shop for certain goods and services. The prisoner found that shortly after logging into this account, he could perform specific gestures on the tablet or abuse the start menu and notification area of the kiosk to send an Aanndd app into the background and access other apps running on the device. So he could get around the intent of the device and run shit in the background. Awesome. One of these apps was a browser page. So much for not having access to the internet, with other items to share on the same network, including the hospital prison secretary's office printer system. This part is unclear in the reporting, but it appears the prisoner accessed a printer's web login page where he claims he could see other people logging into the device and also see the usernames and passwords they were using. This looks like some F12 dev mode hacking. The other theory is that he found access logs and just took the past admin's user credentials, which turned out to also work on the Aanndd app itself. The account he chose to use was for a former director of the Dej Prison Hospital, which had a full admin access to the app. This was an in and out temporary stay for the hospital for prisoners. It looks like this was one prisoner whose name was never shared in the reports. Might have had others who's hacked the kiosk and tablets. One of the people who he appears to have told is Aanndd, a prisoner who was later transferred to the Targu prison in July. A month later, the prisoner tries the same hacking method on his new prison and finds out that credentials from Dej also worked here, since it was a nationwide platform. The first thing Ariel does is to grant some of his inmate friends the right to access adult content. No blurring going on there. Once the big important stuff is out of the way, he starts modifying financial accounts for selected accounts. He modifies money entries by adding zeros to sums, or he deletes past expenses, effectively re-adding spent money back into the prisoner's account. So he Richie Rich that shit. It's like that movie Blank Check. Just digitally blank check that shit. He also modified entries in the Zeal caching 1 days, which are days that prisoners gain their sentences for early release. So he gave them early release days. Awesome. According to official statements, Ariel modified accounts for 15 prisoners, but he was caught after getting too greedy. Isn't that how it always goes? He added too much money to some accounts, with one account holding 5 million tej or lei, $101.15 million. His own account seeing as much as $2,300 a month, an outrageous sum for someone locked up in jail, being almost 3 times as much as the country's minimum wage. The hacking spree unraveled when accounts and a representative from CEC Bank started seeing the irregularities between the money that entered the system, the current total, and the spent amounts. So an investigation began shortly after, and authorities discovered the hacks at the start of October when they removed keyboards from the kiosks and temporarily removed the tablets from use. The Penitentiary Union claims to have observed hacks at 2 other prison complexes besides Dej and Targu in Timisoara and Pedlava near Craiova. Take that, John. The union says the Tarju hacker alone spent more than 300 hours logged into the system with admin access without being detected. They have also accused the Aanndd director of gross negligence for failing to detect the breach after two supervisors and a shift manager reported rumors they had heard from inmates about access to porn sites and modified balances. Bro. Furthermore, an informant allegedly reported the hack to Aanndd a week before it was discovered, only to be ignored. Because prison life is about reputation, the original prisoner who found the Aanndd app loophole has come forward to take credit and tell union members about other ways the app could be hacked, according to media reports. This individual was allegedly jailed for IT-related infractions and presented himself as a member for Anonymous. So he wants to chase a little clout. He wants a little juice from this. Ariel Z is likely regretting his actions right about now. He's serving a 9-year and 10-month prison sentence for laundering money for the Italian mob, and he was set to be freed 5 months from now in January next year. So he went from 5 months to 9 years and 10 months. Yeah. So, yep, the important stuff. Start out with the porn and then move on to adding money on the books and giving people, he gave 15 prisoners, tried to get them out early. Maybe some of them were successfully let out early. I don't know. It's possible. It is very possible. But got too greedy. Way too comfortable. All right. Well, that'll do it for our tablets and phones. I enjoy hearing about inmates fucking it up and getting themselves caught and perjuring themselves, getting themselves in trouble. But alas, it is time to end another episode. So we will, as we always do, end it with a Jake joke. Appropriate. Why did the computer go to a cyber cafe? Because it needed a bite to eat. I know. But it was on topic. It was on topic. And just because we're talking about racy stuff, my wife wanted to have sex on the hood of a random car. And I said no. I said, if I'm going to have sex, it's going to be on my own accord. Yep. Oh. All right. Well, thank you once again, Hard Timers. Appreciate your ongoing patronage. And I will say from myself, good night, Jake. Hard Time will return.